Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever wondered why a brilliantly crafted corporate strategy, I'm talking about something that looks absolutely perfect on paper, and was enthusiastically high-fived by all the top executives, suddenly just falls apart the moment it hits the real world? Usually, it just ends up as a very expensive paperweight. Well, it typically comes down to one simple truth. A corporate strategy is really just a map. It's the daily execution at the departmental level that actually walks the journey.
And it's a super painful reality in the business world. Most grand, boardroom strategic plans, they don't fail because the vision was wrong. No way. They fail simply because of poor implementation right down on the ground level. We spend so much time obsessing over the big picture, but honestly, without specific, day-to-day departmental actions to back it up, that big picture is practically a hallucination. So today, we're going to fix that disconnect.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at, first, the strategy hierarchy. Second, defining functional strategy. Third, executing departmental actions. Fourth, the implementation framework. 5, avoiding strategy pitfalls. And finally, 6, real-world functional success.
All right, part 1, the strategy hierarchy, from boardroom to break room.
Okay, let's dive into this by first understanding where everything lives. Notice the clear descent of strategy here. At the very top, you've got the corporate-level strategy. This defines the massive overall scope and direction of the whole organization, basically deciding which industries to even compete in. Right below that is the business-level strategy, dictating how a specific unit will compete in its chosen market. But down at the foundational base, that's where we have the functional-level strategy. This is where your everyday departments like R&D, marketing, finance, operations, and human resources actually come into play.
Moving right along to part 2, defining functional strategy, the engine of operations.
The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that functional strategy is not about the grand vision at all. It handles a highly constrained, highly specific plan. Its fundamental purpose is to manage specific functional areas effectively to maximize resource productivity. It focuses entirely on coordinating everyday operations so that different departments aren't accidentally working at cross purposes, but are actually actively supporting those overarching corporate goals.
To make this perfectly clear, let's contrast the two extremes. Corporate strategy is asking the big questions. Where do we compete for the next 5 to 10 years? It's super broad. Functional strategy, on the other hand, asks, how do we operate today? It's immediate. Because functional strategies apply to day-to-day operations, managers can actually track performance using highly specific quantitative data. We're talking unit costs, percentage of defects, or daily sales numbers, which allows them to quickly measure success and exercise control.
So, functional strategy really acts as the absolute bedrock of the business. It requires those day-to-day actions to actually deliver on corporate strategies, build the necessary relationships between teams, and determine exactly how functional goals will be met and measured. It's the literal link between the daily grind and the grand business plan. Which brings us to Section 3, executing departmental actions, the mechanics of action.
Think of it this way. If functional strategy is the vehicle, departmental actions are the moving gears inside the engine. You can't just jump from a broad strategy straight into a daily task. Execution is more like a ladder. First, you take that strategy and convert it into action-oriented programs. A program is essentially a collection of specific tactics. And tactics? Those are the short-term operating plans detailing exactly when and where the strategy is put into action. Now, those tactics must then have specific budgets assigned to them, because if there's no money, nothing happens, right? Finally, all of this boils down to procedures. These are the chronological, day-on-day series of related tasks that employees actually sit down and perform. This ladder right here is what converts long-term functional objectives into executable daily reality.
All right, let's look at Section 4, the implementation framework, making it happen.
Our sources are crystal clear on this. For implementation to actually succeed, 5 crucial elements absolutely must be in place. First up, people. You need staff with the right knowledge and abilities. Second, resources. That means sufficient budget and, crucially, realistic time commitments. Third is structure, meaning clear lines of authority and regular strategy sessions. Fourth, systems. You need technology and tracking tools, like scorecards, to actually monitor your milestones. And fifth, culture. You have to foster an environment that rewards success and connects employees directly to the organization's overarching objectives. Listen, if even one of these 5 is missing, execution just stalls out completely.
On to Section 5, avoiding strategy pitfalls, why plans crumble.
You really need to watch out for these common traps, because even the best frameworks can fall apart here. The most frequent cause of plan failure? A sheer lack of ownership. If no single person is held personally responsible, the plan just quietly dies. Then there's poor communication, where employees aren't even aware of how their daily procedures contribute to the bigger picture. Managers also stumble by getting way too bogged down in the daily details and losing sight of the actual goal. And this one is crazy, but sometimes the planning process ignores implementation altogether. They treat the beautifully bound printed document as the finish line rather than the starting line. And finally, a lack of accountability and transparency means nobody even notices when progress comes to a halt. These pitfalls cause departments to bump into each other, ultimately derailing the whole company.
Let's wrap up the theory and jump into Section 6, Real-World Functional Success, Theory and Practice. Take Apple, for example. Our sources point out a massive strategic shift where companies like Apple intentionally moved away from an isolated strategic business unit mindset, which is where different departments basically acted like rival companies fighting for resources, and instead shifted toward a true functional level strategy. Why? Specifically to break down those silos, improve collaboration, and ensure that all departments are genuinely coordinating and pooling their resources. It completely reshapes the internal culture for way better execution.
Similarly, look at Walmart's functional response during the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic back in early 2020. They didn't just rely on some broad, vague corporate statement. They utilized proactive, highly specific functional actions. Their operations team strictly integrated CDC safety guidelines to protect associates and customers while simultaneously executing intense, tactical moves to heavily strengthen their supply chain just to keep up with that unprecedented consumer demand.
And the results of executing those functional strategies so effectively? Absolutely staggering. Because their functional operations delivered exactly what was needed on a daily basis, Walmart saw a massive 460% surge in average daily downloads for their grocery app in April 2020 compared to January. That's huge. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that targeted, daily departmental operations are the true drivers of massive corporate results.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a hard look at your own organization, your own department, and honestly, your own desk. Think about that execution ladder we covered. A strategy is really only as powerful as the daily actions that bring it to life. So when you look at your to-do list tomorrow morning, ask yourself, is your daily grind actually building the corporate vision, or are you just wandering around without a map?